All right, we're live yet again. Saturday's time. I know we spoke about a couple of games today that were supposed to happen. कल हमने अच्छे से preview भी किया था और as expected ही दोनों matches के results हमारे favor में तो नहीं गए. New Zealand winning the game in the first encounter and South Africa taking care of Bangladesh in the second. Jeet and Soumi joining us. Of course, let's start with the second game that happened, which was Bangladesh versus South Africa. Before I open the floor, let's have the match summary out. Bangladesh winning the toss, opting to bat first, and a very weird performance and almost par for course in terms of how they've performed so far in the tournament. A lot of intent shown, a lot of aggressive shots attempted, but none really being executed well enough, which is why you can see 20 overs, 106 for 3. I genuinely don't think it's a clear reflection of how attacking they try to be. Shati Rani, Sobna Mosteri as well, the way she attacked a couple of balls from even Maizan Kap was very heartening to see. Again, with the bats, Sobna Mosteri being the highest run scorer for them yet again, 3 and 4 times now. Also is the second highest run scorer, or rather the third highest run scorer in the World Cup. Nigar Sultana with another impactful 30, 32 of 38 is what she managed. Shati Rani, 19 of 30, was at 5 of 23 at one point in time. So in the last 7 balls, she did score 14 runs, which also included a solid 6 of Vanity Dirksen. That was very, very, very good to watch. Cleared her front leg and absolutely clobbered it past the cow corner fence. With the ball in hand, Vanity Dirksen was the pick of the bowlers for what it's worth. Just that सबने one एक ही wicket लिया was. Vanity Dirksen getting 1 for 7. Maizan Kap 1 for 10 in 4 overs. So in all fairness, was the best bowler for them. Nonkululeko Malaba 1 for 11 for her as well. South Africa in turn did not really get off to the greatest of starts. Laura Wolfhard having a rare failure in the tournament. Also, the way they attacked the Bangla spinners, they weren't really at their fluent best, especially if you compare it with how they were in their previous games, how their batters performed in their previous games. This was a far cry from that. It was fairly scratchy. Annika Bosch took her time, so did Tazmin Brits. They also lost a few wickets in the end, but again, nothing to really be bothered about. Pick of the bowlers for Bangladesh was leg spinner Fahima Khatun, and then Ritu Moni taking the important wicket of Maizan Kap towards the end. Tazmin Brits towards the end. But yes, talking about the game, folks, Soumi, let's start with you. Bangladesh, South Africa, again, result to expected high key given the surface and all of that. But all in all, you must be happy with Bangladesh's performance.
Yes, it was a very spirited performance, especially, the way they started. They seemed absolutely in a total misery. I mean, Shati was just not able to hit. Kap was absolutely at her best. And at that point of time, we felt like, where is this all going? I mean, they were just absolutely completely lost, completely chaotic, and it was just a mere joke, it was seeming like. And from there, I think the power play, had it not been the last couple of fours that Shobna Mostri had hit, I think they would have ended up being somewhere in 10 or 12 runs, scoring 10 or 12 runs out there. But yeah, I mean, right after that, the way they kind of had a breakthrough with those couple of boundaries in the penultimate over of the power play, and the way they tried to make a comeback, I think that was really heartening to watch. Rightly, as you said, the 6 that Chati hit, it was so brilliant and so well executed against the likes of the South African bowling. I think that was really nice to see from Bangladesh. Now, of course, coming to the fact that the South Africa did have a very small score to chase. We were all hoping that they would absolutely go for a kill, and they did try, but in the process of it, they looked absolutely awful. Uh, Something that we expected, that it will be a beautiful hitting by Laura Wolfhard, and considering this was Dubai, everything, all the conditions were favoring them. We definitely wanted to see a lot more beautiful South African batting. It didn't happen. It looked scratchy. Nevertheless, they won the game. So that's all that matters at the end of the day for them. But yeah, really, really happy to see Bangladesh put up a fight. Had they been a little bit better on the field, maybe something better could have happened out of this game.
Yeah, maybe something could have happened, but Jeet, again, the batting we knew that it hasn't been clicking. कल की preview में भी हमने यही discuss किया था कि new ball के साथ ही शायद बहुत wickets गवा देंगे. Wasn't to be the case. They lost just the 2 wickets at the top, and the way Sobna batted, and even Shati, like, kudos to her for sticking just her way through the innings and just trying to be there and not simply give her wicket away, which would have been a very convenient way of just ending things. All in all, that wasn't too bad a batting performance from them.
It was still okay. I wouldn't rate it even as an average, it was below average for sure. Not to forget 11, there were 11 wides as well in that particular inning. So quite a few extras also helping them, take the score above 100. But I don't think that was good batting or even average batting. It was below average for sure. Because if you just lose 3 wickets by the end of 20 overs and have put just 106 runs on the board, it shows a lack of aggressive options that you've got. And that was exactly what was on display over here as well. I remember Nasser Hussain in the first game talking about why is Nigar Sultana Jyoti not batting higher up the order. She's the best batter, and as that typical conception goes, that your best batter has to face the most balls. That's rubbish. It's not necessary for your best batter to play the most balls. It depends upon what kind of batter he or she is, whether they are aggressive, whether they are defensive, in what phase of the game they are good. So over here, we that's where I think we are seeing this problem, right? Because Shobna Mustari at number three is something that the management had talked about, that she's the only option, and that's why they are picking her. And she's a slow batter as well at number three. And all these three knocks, while she has scored runs, which is good for her in Bangladesh, none of the runs have come at a strike rate of even 100. They've all been less than 100, if I recollect. So you have Shobna Mustari coming at number three, and then Nigar Sultana Jyoti coming at number four. Nigar also is very, very similar. So you're having your batters at number three and batters at number four all being very, very defensive or being very slow starters or those kind of batters who play the anchor role. So what's the advantage you're getting out of that? It doesn't matter how long your partnerships are, यार इतना slow जाओगे क्या point है? इतने aggressive options बाद में है. Switch it up ना यार. If the situation demands an aggressive batter to walk in, let them come in. We saw the second wicket go down at 7.5 overs. Then the partnership was almost 10 overs, 17.1 पे next year. तब तक वही slow pace पे चल रहा था. क्या point है उसका? And even coming to the selection, Murshida Khatun, why was she picked? There is no logic whatsoever in her selection. If you wanted to pick her, why did she not open? And why did Dilara Akhtar not go out in that case? क्या logic था उसको लेने का यार? और किसी में invest कर देते? It would have been a lot more fruitful for you all. So I was not convinced, यार. It was disappointing.
The way I would look at it is, given the way they performed against, some of their other teams, especially with the bat in hand, and also given the fact that Dubai it's a fresh surface, so the odds were heavily stacked in South Africa's favor. The surface was right up their alley; it suited their strengths. So, given that, I would still give them some credit. But in general, if you want to compare them to the best sides in the tournament, then sure, you can't really say this was a good fight from there. In terms of the fielding, especially, that's where they would really want to improve massively. Nigar Sultana Jyoti herself did not have the greatest of days as a keeper, so something they would want to look at. But now, on the other hand, in terms of South Africa's batting, Soumi also spoke about how it was a tad bit scratchy. They took their time, which was very unlike them, because against West Indies, against Scotland, they were at their attacking best. What did you make of the performance? And do you think it had to do with the opposition? Do you think it had to do with the surface itself? Because make no mistake, again, this is the first time a night game is being played in Dubai on a fresh surface. Do you think that potentially played a bit of a role there?
I'm not too sure if it was a fresh surface or not, because you could see the movement here. I don't think I've seen so much spin. And of course, that turn also was coming off very slow deliveries where I could clearly see the batters being very early into their shot and getting completely beaten all ends up against those slow left arm orthodox bowlers in particular, or even some of the wrist spinners. So I don't think it was that easy a track either. The fresh surface, this is solitary game in the entire day at Dubai. That was not quite the case. Thoda the challenging tha. But South Africa, I don't know, all the batters were very, very scratchy. I mean, none of them were really convincing in their entire knock. Whether you talk about Laura Vulfar, Tazmin Brits, Aneka Bosch, Marzan Kaap was still decent. But again, Chloe Chan is somebody who hacks the ball as well. So maybe they were trying a bit too much. I'm not too sure. It didn't look like that to me in particular. But they were very scratchy here. I was not convinced with any of the batters either, because Laura Wolford again got an early reprieve. She was again put down, although it was a slightly difficult catch at backward point. But for me, yaar, ek life mil gaya. And I know she was not able to, make the ultimate use of it by converting it into a big one. She was out for 7 runs. But after that, that partnership between Tasman Brits and Aneka Bosch, that was one of the most horrible partnerships I was, kind of witnessing, because the amount of shots that they mistimed, the amount of shots that they clofted, the number of balls that went in the air and fell short of the fielders, and the amount of drop catches and the running between the wickets, all the five things went in their favor somehow. They were that bad, but they kept getting away with it, kept getting away with it. And eventually it led to a good partnership. And then Aneka Bosch did a pretty decent job. after the first 5 or 7 balls that she faced. After that, she was hitting the spinners really well, but very unconvincing. And I would personally say that they got away with it. South Africa literally got away with it. Had Bangladesh managed to touch that 130 mark or even 125, and had they held on to the chances or had a bit of luck going their way, I still think Bangladesh could have won this game.
Yeah, fair enough. Like we said, the way they fielded was definitely not something they'd be proud of, especially that run-out chance. Also, now that you mention it, there was a very obvious run-out chance. And how did they miss it? Like, both batters at one end, all Nagar had to do was pass the ball to Fahima, if I'm not wrong, who was at the bowler's end. A very wild throw, and Fahima couldn't really do much of it, and Annika Bosch was able to make her ground. But yeah, I mean, this is something they will hopefully work on. And also, given that the way Shati Rani, again, I know 19 of 30 does not paint a good picture, but given the fact that she was willing to try and attack even the likes of Maizan Kaap and other paces, was definitely a good sign. And hopefully with time, something we've spoken about, this is still early stages for her. This is her first ever appearance at the World Cup. So hopefully the next time they do play a World Cup, which is 2026, let's hope London mein England mein acha kar payenge wahan pe. Last bit of formality before we talk about the afternoon game. There is the top performer, and who else but Jeet's favorite Tazmin Brits, who is our top performer of the day. She also, in the process, became the highest run scorer in this edition of the World Cup. Also became the first batter to breach the 150 run mark in this edition of the World Cup. 42 of 41, 5 fours. Again, not the most aggressive of knocks, but given the situation and given that they were chasing 107, it was important for at least one of them to stay till the end. Jeet, let's start with you again. The knock in and of itself will give her a lot of confidence because she's been amongst the runs this entire tournament.
Yeah, she's been amongst runs. I mean, there haven't been so many failures in the 4 games that they've had. So of course she's at the top of the run scoring chart now. So she's already confident as far as that's concerned. But again, that very scratchy knock, control percentage of 65, 68. But anyway, she kind of hung in, and that's important in these kind of situations. Catches go down, misfields happen, balls don't carry, but you kind of hang in there and try to make the ultimate use of it. And that's exactly what Tazmin Britt invariably does every time, where she keeps getting away with it, but ends up with 45 not outs and 50 not outs to win the game for her side.
Chalo bhai, backhanded ही सही compliment तो एक दे दिया वहाँ पे. But Soumi, again, what did you make of the knock? Given that, again, like we've said, South Africa are favourites to make it through to the semi-final, given that West Indies have to overcome England, and if I'm not wrong, also have an NRR deficit to take care of. So Tazmin Brits amongst the runs is something they will be happy with.
I think yes, they will be happy with that in absoluteness. But as Jeet rightly mentioned, it was very unconvincing, and it has been the same story for her through and through, right? She has not been convincing at all. It's good for South Africa that they have Laura Woolward on the other hand to manage the bigger chunk of the things. But on situations like these where Laura Woolward will not may not be as efficient as in all the games, what happens in such a situation? Can Tasmin Brits really take up that opportunity of and really get into an attacking mode? That's something that's really we need to wait and watch. As per Jeet, and if I have to just go by Jeet, that's really a very distant possibility. But that's something that South Africa has to gear up for going into the knockout phases. So that's something that I'll also kind of look forward to. This kind of looks like, we were discussing yesterday offline about Ash Gardner's 4 and why that is not the best of the performances as per us. I think it's just on a very similar note that definitely the runs have been stacked up, but it's not convincing, and it's not really in a space where it will really make a huge amount of impact to the game. So
yeah, an unconvincing win, an unconvincing performance. That way, I guess Bangladesh do have something to be happy about, given the way they performed. At least they did put up a decent enough showing. Before I give it to G, this slight correction on my part. Of course, I thought West Indies had an NRR deficit to clear. It's West Indies who are slightly ahead, 1.7 plus 1.7 as opposed to South Africa's plus 1.3. And sorry, Jeet, you were adding something to Tazmin Brits.
No, that is exactly what I want to talk about. That because they took their sweet little time to chase it down, it means that West Indies have the advantage as far as that NRR is concerned. So things are getting really interesting as far as this particular group is concerned. If tomorrow, of course, England ends up defeating Scotland by a huge margin, then boy oh boy, that game between West Indies and England is going to be a cracker, absolute cracker, and I can't wait for that.
Yeah, imagine what are the odds कल गलती से Scotland England को upset कर दे and West Indies and South Africa go through. What are the odds? That'll be hilarious. That'll be hilarious. But okay, actually that won't be possible because both sides have already lost the
Knockouts.
game. So it's a virtual knockout for them should England lose as well. But yeah, Rahul says South Africa versus Australia will be the first semi-final and England versus New Zealand will be the second. And of course, it will once again be an Australia-England final and again Australia will win. The last time we saw an Australia England final was 2018, I would imagine. Yeah, 2018. तो ठीक है बस मतलब 6 साल हो गए उसको भी. Let's hope इस बार नहीं देखने को मिलेगा हमें. But coming back, of course, we're done with the game that ended just an hour ago. Let's now talk about the much important Group A game that also had consequences to India's qualification scenarios, or rather consequence to India's qualification scenarios. New Zealand taking on Sri Lanka earlier in Sharjah. For those who've forgotten, the game, of course, happened in Sharjah at 3:30 p.m. Sri Lanka won the toss like we hoped for and opted to bat first like we once again hoped for. And that was pretty much where our hopes ended because uske baad se it was, again, probably relative to what their other batting performances have been. This was their best batting performance, but again, not good enough at all. 115 for 5 is what they ended up with. Chamari Attapattu being the top run scorer. A very scratchy 35 for 41. If you thought Tasman's 41 balls were scratchy, Chamari really, outdid her on that one. Harshita Samaravikrama with an equally scratchy 29 ball 18. Nilakshi Sirva was actually the only one who looked in some semblance of form along with Ama Kanchana. Amelia Kerr was the pick of the bowlers for New Zealand. Used those googlies to great effect. The way she also challenged Chamari and got her wicket was wonderful to watch. 2 for 13 in her 4 overs. Leigh Kasperek making her first appearance in this edition of the World Cup with a good performance, 2 for 27 in her 4 overs. And Eden Carson also chipping in with a wicket. For New Zealand, though, it was Georgia Plimmer through and through. Susie Bates really took her time, looked very out of sorts, could not connect the ball at all. And Georgia Plimmer took up the onus on herself to ensure that boss jo bhi ho runs to bante rahenge. In fact, there was this three over phase in between where they scored 31 runs, which practically took the game away from Sri Lanka's clutches. For Sri Lanka, though, with the ball, there was hardly anything to be proud of. Chamari with the wicket. Sachini also bowled decently, but not a lot of support from them, especially after the way they began. Their first 4 overs went for only 17 runs. It really seemed like Sri Lankan bowlers were looking good to try and defend this. Uske baad se just withered away the way Nushi Priyadarshini bowled. There was also a couple of drop catches. Nothing going their way. Show me again. Matlab, you mentioned that New Zealand would start favourites for you, but Sri Lanka, agar thoda, or if they were tight enough on the field, or if they were better with the bat, they could have really made a game out of this.
I agree. I mean, at least till both the power plays, both the teams were at par. Of course, New Zealand hadn't lost a wicket compared to what Sri Lanka had. But over and above, I felt I agree for you about when you said that Chamari was scratchy, but the way New Zealand was sloppy in their early overs, it just completely overwhelmed my entire senses that how can they be so much more shoddy on the field. I mean, we have been talking so much about New Zealand spacers and the way they were just clueless. It was just weird to see. I mean, 11 extras overall, and 7 or 8 of them had come right in the beginning. The Pacers were just leaking extras left, right, and center. So those were very, very weird signs, and it was worrying that whether actually New Zealand was going to make it through, considering that no matter what, Chamari was scratchy. She was muscling every ball, but at the same time, she was able to get those runs. But as we most often say that, I mean, without after Chamari, there's nothing that remains with Sri Lanka. It was exactly the same case today. Right after Chamari went, things kind of started to go downhill. Though I would say, that 115 of a score wasn't too bad either. I mean, 120 is an average, and we would have expected New Zealand to restrict Sri Lanka at a much lower score. And if they wouldn't have given those 11, 12 extra runs, they would have probably restricted Sri Lanka to a much lower score. And even while chasing, they could have reached there at a decent enough much earlier and boosted their net run rate, which would have kept them in a much more stronger, formidable position in the table. So yeah, a lot of sorry, that's my dog, but yeah, a lot of a lot of things that New Zealand really messed up. Somehow they managed to get this through. Of course, Sri Lanka was okay to start with, but then completely lost the plot of the game.
Jeet, again, sure, Sri Lanka's batting wasn't the greatest. New Zealand did make that one change that you also specifically wanted them to do, which was Leigh Kasperek replacing Fran Jonas. But all in all, if you have to rate this QB bowling performance, how would you look at it? Happy with it? Do you think they could still potentially make slight changes to their, pace attack or bowling attack to sort of help them, do better, especially at a venue like Sharjah?
I still think this is the best bowling attack for them to go ahead with even in the future. The only change that I could think of would be Hannah Rowe coming in place of Leah Tahu, because I would want that extra batter. And that is the batting option that somebody like Leah Tahu provides over Fran Jonas. So that's the only reason why I would want Leah Tahu. Jeskar, I've already discussed as to why there is pretty much no point in having her on the side. So Leah Tahu, of course, it's that added batting value that she provides, and similarly you get that from Hannah Rowe as well. So that's the only thing that they could think of. But otherwise, I still feel that this is the best bowling attack for them to keep backing upon even in the next game for them to come. I don't see why they should be changing anything. But here's an interesting thing that Sophie Devine also chipped in this time around. Liato bowled her 2 overs for 15 runs, and suddenly Sophie Devine decided to roll her arm over and conceded 18 runs over 2 overs. So it was interesting. Maybe she wanted to roll her arm over. Maybe she sees herself as an option going forward, and it could potentially also be a sign of Liato potentially being left out. He would be thinking to add, maybe even Fran Jonas and bolster the spin attack even further. I don't think it's going to happen, but it was interesting how, out of nowhere, she suddenly decided to bowl. But overall, I'm still like decently content. Rosemary Mayer was off to a bit of a wayward start early on in her first over. But after that, she came back splendidly well to just concede 17 runs over 4 overs. And spinners also did a decent job. Again, those catches and everything kind of costed them eventually. But still, I mean, in terms of the overall result, it didn't really matter. But TK, I'm more than happy with the kind of bowling attack they had this time around.
I think as soon as I saw Leigh Kasperek in the side, I mean, we were just all smiling ear to ear. I mean, very happy for Jeet. I mean, every time I have heard him speak about her, it almost felt like, Jeet proposes and Divine disposes. But yeah, it was, I'm so sorry for this. Let me just handle this and come back.
Yeah, no worries. Take care of Fanny if I'm not wrong. But yeah, before that, I mean, New Zealand, of course, they did make that one change. Leigh Kasperek bowled well. But Jeet, what was important was something we have discussed before. In Sharjah especially, you have to bowl a lot more slower. Your spinners have to understand ki boss, tez dal ki kuch fayda nahi. There's no point being flat. And that's what Enoshi Priyadarshini was guilty of, which annoyed me even more because they played 2 games here before. You would imagine Sri Lanka would understand the surface here. But the way Leigh Kasperek herself bowled was very, very, very heartening for New Zealand. Went a long way in ensuring that they got those key wickets.
That's the whole point why I wanted to see her, getting added ahead of Fran Jonas. If this T20 World Cup was somewhere in New Zealand or Australia, it would have been a different case altogether. But given how the surfaces have behaved, given what we've already witnessed at both venues, it made complete sense for them to stick with Leigh Kasperek, or at least include her for the second game after learning what happened in the first one. But given the fact that they won that first game against India, kind of probably just ensured that she kind of stays out of the side, and they kind of pretty much stuck with their 11, barring Fran Jonas coming into the side. So anyway, the purpose or the point here being that the whole purpose of having Leigh Kasperek was going by the trend, just to bank upon what has really worked for all the spinners over here, in particular the finger spinners. The slower ones have turned out to be a lot more effective, and Kasperek, fits in that particular rank. Whereas Fran Jonas is very, very quicker through the air. She doesn't really slow it up. She's always, above 85. I've rarely seen in deliveries, being lower than 85. So there's no point of having that kind of a left arm spinner who doesn't even turn the ball, who just keeps bowling arm balls after arm balls at 85 plus. वो नहीं चलने वाला है, देख लिया already. So that's where I was wanting, at least New Zealand to learn from the previous game at Sharjah, and they finally did, luckily, and we could see the pace at which Leigh Kasperek was operating and the success that she got of those slower pace deliveries, and it worked really well for them. Of course, she could have had the third wicket as well in that last over, but I don't know which Maddie Greeners showed up in this particular tournament, having dropped a second catch at Lungon. So
a second
anyway,
dolly.
Can't help that.
Yeah.
Second dolly, yeah, that's true.
And again, sure, Leigh Kasperek bowled well. And to be honest, in general, New Zealand's bowlers did put up a fantastic showing there. But Shumi, what about the Sri Lankan spinners? Because a lot was expected off of them. Given this match, given the venue, given New Zealand's own struggles against spin, you would have really thought that Sri Lankan spinners have already played twice here before, so they would have a much better understanding of the surface. They'll be able to use it to their advantage. We didn't really see that happen.
Exactly, and you know what was a little astonishing for me is that when we talk about that pace, when we talk about that the speed, Sri Lankan spinners were pretty much slower. I mean, they were bowling in that range of around 75 to 80, which we have been talking about for a long time now. And in spite of that, they weren't really getting those big successes. Of course, if we look into the power play, and also if we look into a little later, like from the 11th over mark or maybe at the 12th over mark, the run rate was kind of curtailed down. But I think the ones in between, like in between that 7th to 10th over of mark, that's where New Zealand actually went really bang, 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 especially, Plimmer. And that's where the match was kind of gone. And after that, Sri Lanka was not really able to grasp anything back. Of course, they were also not very impressive on the field. That might have also added up. But over and above, I think that's where the spinners kind of lost the track of the game.
All right, and it'll be interesting to see now that Sri Lanka is already out. New Zealand have just the one game remaining against Pakistan. That game is now going to happen in Dubai. Sorry, Jeet, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just feel that, I think Sri Lanka have done a bit of an overkill as far as the spinners are concerned. Itne spinners are itne ja rahe. They've got so many spinners that, I think Chamari is left confused with the kind of options that she has got. And I think that's resulting in pretty much everybody faltering. You look at their averages. Sugandhika Kumari is the only spinner that even I have been impressed by. And she has been decent, averaging 21.8. But you look at other spinners. There was Inoka Ranavira, who averages 46. Sachin Nissan 51. Kavisha Dilhari, just imagine how much we had talked about her, averages 58. That is how horrible, they have been. Even Inoshi Priyadarshini, I think she has been the most disappointing bowler for me, as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, having conceded 60 runs without taking a single wicket. So all of the spinners have faltered so badly, barring Sugandhika Kumari, that I feel it's that spin overkill that has led to a lot of confusion. एक मैच में 5 spinners खेल रहे हैं, all are finger spinners. There are 3 left arm orthodox, sometimes there are 3 right arm orthodox. How many spinners have you got? Inoshi Priyadarshini, I just couldn't understand what she has done the entire tournament. Ek to, she has not been, so accurate with her lines. Even today, I observed one thing. We know that, she generally balls, her arm balls are drift away from the right-handers. And when she was doing that to Amelia Kerr, they had 3 fielders in the circle on the offside. And there were huge gaps in between. And there was a long off. And Amelia Kerr was hitting those gaps with such ease. वो outside the off डाल रही है यार वो arm balls. क्या point है ये?
ही उसी दिशा में मतलब the ball's also drifting further away.
Exactly, drifting away. And the line is already wide outside the off stump. So you're getting further punished by that. So I couldn't understand any of these things. Either there was a miscommunication from Chamari and Inoshi, or maybe Inoshi herself was just missing her mark, which has been the theme for her in this entire tournament. So it was very disappointing from Sri Lanka overall. I just couldn't understand what they were trying to do, yaar. Or kuch variation dekhe aao, yaar. They could have played Sashini in this one. Try something else, right? In 3 games, these spinners have not worked out for you. They've been complete disappointments, barring Sugandhika. So try something new. You have lost the tournament. You are out of it. You rather give somebody else and add that variety in your side. Yeah, iska kya point hai to continue like this?
Yeah, to be honest, even before Inoshi, it was Chamari's captaincy itself, her entry point when Inoshi was brought in. So 4 overs were done. Sugandhika and Prabodhini both had bowled 2 over spells from either ends and had done well. I was expecting Sugandhika to get her 3rd over on the trot from that end. But no, we saw Inoshi Priyadarshini come there and she released all the pressure that had been created in the first 4 overs. And then last over of the power play, see Sugandhika bowling from the other end. क्यों? जब उसने 2 अच्छे ओवर उस एंड से किए थे, why did you change her end? मतलब ये क्या चल रहा है? ये क्यों हुआ? ये and that was the 3 over phase I was referring to, where they gave away 31 runs. And that's when the game was killed. At the end of the 7th over, New Zealand were at 48 for no loss. From then, there was no coming back. The required rate was already a shade below 5. तुम क्या expect करो? Like, why was that done? What was the reason behind it? And then on top of that, when you add the way she bowled and the fields that were set up, it just did not make a lot of sense. Again, a far cry from how professional and clinical they were in the Asia Cup final. So let's hope again this is just an outlier and they will recover from this, because they have been, on the sort of upward trajectory in the last 12 to 18 months. So let's hope all the good work done has not been undone. This is just a minor blip that way. Given that Chamari will also be going out post the tournament in all likelihood, at least from this format, it is important that Sri Lanka also keep grooming youngsters and keep giving the youngsters enough chances. So fingers crossed on that. Yes, Jeet.
They had 9 players over the age of 30. If you remember, that is one of the things that we had talked about in our previews.
Yeah.
The oldest squad amongst all the teams, and the only squad which has an average age that touches 30, with 9 players being over the age of 30. And when I say over 30, the ages are like 36, 37, 39.
Inoka Ranavira
Yeah,
is the
that
oldest, 39 or 38 or something.
no. Udeshika Prabodhani 39, I think, is the oldest.
Yeah.
So itne matlab, and it didn't work out. So some teams, bank upon youth in this format, while some bank upon experience. And that experience bit didn't really, pan out well for Sri Lanka in this one.
Anyways, what did pan out well was Georgia Plimmer's performance, which is why she's also the top performer of the day. A very good knock from her. And very unlike her that way, in the sense that she's not really done well so far for New Zealand, at least before the World Cup. And now in the World Cup, she's already scored 250s. She was averaging 10 or 11 before the World Cup began, did not really have the greatest of strike rates. And then from there, 53 or 44, given the conditions, given New Zealand's own struggles against spin. Jeet, a very good performance this from her.
Yeah, it was definitely really pleasing to see that, because I remember when I was complaining when she was batting in the middle order, and then again all that switch happened, and I was again left frustrated. Ki, ye kya ho raha hai? Like, what are you trying to do with Georgia Plimmer? Because I've talked about her talent. I've never questioned her talent. 2 years ago, when I watched her in the Super Smash, she again averaged like 16 or 17, but I was very impressed with the kind of shots and the kind of intent she had as an opener. But uske baad, it didn't really pan out well for her in the New Zealand setup, and was again that shuffling that led to all these kind of numbers and averages being affected, and her performance is getting affected because that clarity of role was not there, in my opinion. But now again, she has been persisted with as an opener, and I think she has done a very good job. That 15, the third T20 against Australia, is something we talked about, how that's going to help her confidence. Because before that, she didn't have those huge scores. When you're talking about an average of like 13 or 14 in T20s, her entire T20 career has also been like that. Super Smash में भी उसका average 12-13 का ही after like 50 plus games. So that's been the theme. But talent is something I've never questioned with Plimmer, and it's good to see her putting this performance again, because against India also she put in a very, very decent performance, and for her to replicate it on a surface that was a lot more trickier against a very, very spin heavy attack was very, very pleasing to see. Of course, her game versus spin has improved significantly. The last Super Smash season that happened, it was very, very distinctively visible, because the two players who stood out for me against spin were Amelia Kerr and Georgia Plimmer. They were fantastic at maneuvering the ball, manipulating the fields, constantly rotating the strike, and also finding the boundaries. And tonight we saw that happen as well, or today, in fact.
Funnily enough, if I was just looking at her records right now, before her last 4 innings, she averaged 8.2 in her T20 career, in which she played 25 innings. Aisa bhi nahi ki small sample size at time though. Across 25 innings, an average of 8.25 usually warrants an axe, but good on New Zealand for, giving her an extended run there. First, it began with the 50 against Australia. Then there was a 34, my bad, against India. I confused the 50s there. And then, of course, a good 50 here as well. Very important one for her, given that New Zealand could potentially not just make it to the semi-final, but play it at this very venue, given how things stand. So again, it'll give her a world of, it'll give her a lot of confidence, sorry, doing well here against spinners, importantly, given New Zealand's failties against spin. So fingers crossed they will do well there and will be able to come good even in the semi-final. We'll just take this one question from Sports Fan before we move on to tomorrow's games, which I know a lot of you are waiting for us to talk about. I know we ourselves are thrilled about. So Sports Fan goes on to say, guys, do you think Sri Lanka and New Zealand performed opposite in the World Cup than what they were doing throughout the year? That's a fair way of putting it, given their recent record before the World Cup. Sri Lanka looked in decent touch. And even during our team previews, we did say, Sri Lanka probably would stand a better chance of ending the World Cup with a win or two, if not more. New Zealand, on the other hand, we did not really have a lot of expectations. They were entering the World Cup with a 10-match losing streak. Batters weren't in the greatest of form. They were struggling against spin. The numbers all backed that. But good on them. They really turned the table around and turned it how. So right now they are favourites to make it to the semi-final again. Against hosts, or rather not hosts, against top contenders, India themselves. So that's good on them for sure. Anyways, that's that from the reviews of both the games that we saw today. Now it is time for us to look ahead to tomorrow's couple of games, beginning with the European derby. It's England taking on Scotland in Sharjah, and that game is coming live at 3:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. And then, of course, is the all-important encounter between Australia and India. That's coming live from Dubai at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. But like always, we'll start with the first game, the European derby. Guys, of the Men's World Cup is anything to go by, England have a very bad record against European nations. We all know that. In fact, they have a 3-0 record. They're yet to defeat a European nation in the World Cups. I don't know if the women's team have had the chance to play Ireland in the World Cup. Scotland to pehli baari khel raha hai. So, Jeet bhai, let's start with you. Irrespective of previous records, क्या लग रहा है? क्या expectations है England Scotland in Sharjah? How badly do you think Scotland can lose, or do you think there's an upset on the cards?
Upset तो नहीं है cards पे. It's about कितना margin होता है, because England are going to come out swinging, that's for sure. They're going to come out really hard because they know that just like other teams, even they would want to, make use of this particular clash against Scotland as a measure to, up their NRR. So they will also use this game to do the same thing. And they know it's vital as well, because all they need to really do is ensure that their NRR goes above South Africa's, which is around 1.3. Once you go past that, even a loss against, I know it's going to be still close, because a loss will have to be a close loss, but it will still put them in a very, very good position if they, cross South Africa on NRR as well, heading into the last game. So I think they'll look to maximize this. They'll potentially look to bowl first over here. So, I think Sri Lanka opted to bat first. I think Scotland will look to bowl first over here. Sorry, England will look to bowl first here, bundle Scotland out as quickly as possible, and then chase it down as quickly as possible. That's what I personally see happening over here. But yeah, it's all about the margin of defeat rather than this being a close encounter and Scotland putting up a fight. I know spin attack and all these things is what they've got, but then of course, England themselves have got a very, very good spin attack as well. So I don't know how much to expect out of that. Plus, I feel that Scotland will pretty much enter this game giving a chance to those players who have been on the bench for the first 3 games. So there'll be quite a few changes as far as the personnel is involved as well.
Show me, how do you think England will be, entering this game? What's the mindset going to be like? Will they be focusing on the NRR, or they'll just be backing themselves to win this game and the next one and just make it through to the semis on the basis of points and none of this NRR tussle coming into the picture?
I think they will be pretty much riding on high confidence of and not really bothering about just winning this game. As Jeet rightly mentioned, they would want to focus on the NRR, and that is where I believe their batters has to come into play, especially considering that their last game is against West Indies, right? Yeah, so I think that's where West Indies would try to put the net run rate up, because they do have a very strong batting lineup there, and that's where England also should be trying to target and win this by a big margin. And hence, their power hitters, their openers, they will probably be the major players to watch out for.
Interesting. And Jeet, again, given that the game's happening in Sharjah, you think Scotland will also look to bowl first should they win the toss, or they'll still want to bat first and try and put a score on the board and give enough batting time to the batters themselves?
I think Scotland will look to bowl first over here. So irrespective of who wins the toss, I think the decision might be to bowl first. Honestly, मैं आज ही surprised था why Sri Lanka opted to bat first when the theme has been to chase it down against New Zealand in the recent past. But I don't think England at least will be looking at it from that perspective. England for sure will look to bowl first. I'll be surprised if they bat first. That's a different thing. Scotland, I'm still kind of split. I personally still think they'll look to bowl first and then try to chase down whatever the target will be in front of them. That's how I see it. But England, I'm quite certain.
All right, and lastly, any changes that you're expecting from either side, especially with England, this being their last game before the West Indies encounter, जहाँ पे it could potentially be a must-win for West Indies. Do you see any of their other players' reserves getting some chances here?
England, the thing is, look, Danny Gibson has played all the games so far, all the two games that have happened for England. Danny Gibson has been a part
Without
of it,
knowing
but she
anything.
hasn't bowled a single over. She hasn't bowled a single over. So their only pacer has been Natsiva Brunt in both the games. So I don't understand the purpose of having Danny Gibson. And it makes sense. मतलब extra space नहीं चल रहा है ज़्यादातर. Sharjah में there is no point in particular. So I have been personally thinking that it's better off to pick Freya Kim not only for her left arm angle as a pacer, but also the fact that she can bowl those cutters and Yorkers and she's good with that. So it's a new variety and a variety that should work out in these conditions. Plus, of course, the additional advantage of having a left-hand batter. I know you don't agree with that, but she can still strike it very, very cleanly against some of the bowlers. So that will also they get that option of a left-hander in their lineup alongside Lindsay Smith. So that's the only change that I would still probably look at. I'd be very surprised if they think out of the box and go ahead with say somebody like Lauren Bell ahead of Danny Gibson. तो फिर पता नहीं क्या होगा. But if I was to make or if I was to call the shots here, then I would go for again Freya Kemp in place of Danny Gibson, just like I mentioned the last time around. As far as Scotland is concerned, I think some of the players who haven't got a chance so far will be in the mix this time around. But it's just that जो भी options है who have been benched, none of them are spinners. So how do they add somebody like Chloe Abel? How do they add somebody like Hannah Rainey? Is a question mark. Rachel Slater might be somebody who might go out because she didn't have a good game the last time around at this venue. So that is the only spot which stands as a bit of a concern as far as the bowling attack is concerned, and that is where Hannah Rainey might come into the mix ahead of Chloe Abel, being a lot more slower. And in the batting department, I would again say maybe Darcy Carter is a name that they could look at. Priyanas Chatterjee is a name that they could look at. And that is where maybe Abby Atkin Drummond could come in. Megan McCall can be given a chance. And I hope these kind of changes happen as well. They'll make a lot more sense because Priyanas Chatterjee, who is a bowler who can bat, has been doing a lot of batting rather than bowling. Or five पे batting करी and I don't see a point. You bat higher up the order in the Super Smash, ठीक है चल जाता है या regional में चल जाता है. For Scotland, I don't think she's cut out for that spot. She's a decent batter, but not a number five batter. So those are a couple of changes or a couple of spots that are slightly shaky, and that's where I think Scotland might contemplate, bringing these new players into the mix.
All right, देखते हैं क्या होता है. And with England as well, in fact, that's the only change that even I would want England to make, and that's something both G and I have been talking about since the beginning of the first game itself. Given that it would give them some much-needed variety, and also the fact that they haven't been using Gibson enough, so अगर तुम्हें सिर्फ एक spot fill करने के लिए चाहे तो might as well just have that option with you, right? Like in case you want that, in case it comes in hand. So you never know. So let's see how that plays out tomorrow. Of course, now it is time for us to talk about the big encounters. India versus Australia. The game's coming live at 7:30 p.m. sharp from Sharjah, like Pawan here mentions. I know there have been quite a few comments already. We'll take them all up towards the end for sure. But first, हम ही शुरू करते हैं डिस्कस करने के लिए. Show me again. Must win ही सोच के जाना पड़ेगा इंडिया को because they cannot rely on New Zealand losing their last game and whatnot. Given that they are coming from a 4-day break, which is fairly longish, and this is going to be their first game in Sharjah, what are you expecting from India?
I think number one, India has to put in their 200%. They cannot just go in there and put up, 80, 90% of an effort. And considering that now New Zealand has won, they have to be super efficient on the field. Considering it's Sharjah, again, spin will come in handy. Thankfully, India does have a good spin bank. I'm hoping that Asha Shobna can come very handy. We can also help, really expect Sri Lanka Patil to come very handy. So yeah, I mean, I'm really banking on the spinners, but at the same time, considering that this is Australia and they will be absolutely coming out all guns blazing because it's India after all. That's where we would really need to have a solid batting as well. Just the fact that the in our first two games, our top order didn't really fire that much. That's something that's really scary for me. If at all something of that sorts happen tomorrow, then it will be really difficult for India to come back into the game. So a good, solid opening partnership and a strong spin bowling can take can take us a little further.
All right, Jeet bhai, क्या लग रहा है? Given the fact that this is going to be India's first game in Sharjah, do you expect them to make any changes to the 11 as well? Like a sports fan also goes on to mention, do you think they could potentially look at Radha Yadav in place of Sajna? क्या लगता है पूरा
ये
spin
पता नहीं
India
whether Radha Yadav for Sachna could be interesting. I don't think that would be a spot that they would probably look at. I know it makes sense as well, वैसे variety add करने के लिए. Radha Yadav can bat as well, but I would still back Sajna or Radha Yadav in that case if that's a spot you're talking about. Because I think over here the question has been whether Radha Yadav plays or Asha Shobna plays. But abhi, since Asha Shobna put in that performance in the last game, I think she's kind of cemented her position in the playing 11. So I don't think India will be looking to make any changes whatsoever. Because right now, if you look at the team composition in all the three games, it perfectly matches both the venues. It's suited to both the venues. Pacers भी है जो job कर रहा है. एक swing bowler है new ball, एक middle phase की bowler है who bowls those cutters, and they've got that spin variety as well. So all of them have been doing a decent job. So the stuff that worked at Dubai is the same kind of team composition that should ideally work at Sharjah as well. Personally, yes, it's true. I mean, I would continue to back Radha Yadav over Asha Shobna, but I don't think they'll probably look to make that change anyway now. अभी वो 2 विकेट नहीं लेती अगर आशा शोभना तो फिर बात अलग था, but I don't see any of these changes coming. But I think it's a massive advantage for Australia respectively. And like you mentioned, it's India's first game at Sharjah. It's going to be very challenging to adjust to conditions which have been very, very different than what we have seen at Dubai. Playing on one of the best tracks that India had in the entire tournament, and now playing at Sharjah, which has been very horrible in terms of batting. It's going to be a huge challenge. So I mean, they had all this net session, and they batted. Amol Mazumdar had a net session as well, picking up the bat and batting for a few minutes. It's still going to be a challenge respectively for India.
Yeah, and to be honest, I also wouldn't want to tinker too much with the 11.
Yeah.
The idea of Radha Yadav instead of Sajna on paper would make sense कि हाँ variety मिल जाएगा, but I feel that would leave our batting a bit too thin. I would want to have or back Sajna, especially at a venue like Sharjah. Basically, she can do what Australia is expecting Grace Harris to do. Maybe not to that extent, but even to a lesser extent, if she's able to do something like that, like an 8 ball 12 or a 10 ball 15, that will be good enough for her and for India as well. So I would want to back her on the surface like this, especially spinners के सामने खेलना पड़ेगा. You would expect Australia also to come up with a proper spin barrage against India. So given that, it'll be interesting for sure. But now, भाई जीत भाई, ऑस्ट्रेलिया के साथ भी ऐसा नहीं होगा कि सेम 11 खेल पाएंगे. दो changes तो most likely होने वाले because Elisa Healy and Taylor Fleming both have been ruled out of the game. Taylor, in fact, most likely out of the tournament as well. Of course, no official update so far. But given that, what are the changes you're expecting to happen for Australia?
Grace Harris is surely going to come in because it's at Sharjah when she was picked for impact, as Healy mentioned. So she has to be picked, and they anyway don't have any other options as far as that particular department is concerned. It's just a call that they need to take as far as who the replacement for Taylor Fleming could be. Do they really want to go ahead with another pacer and Darcy Brown or Kim Garth, or do they want to bank upon Alana Keane to add another vital wrist spinner on the side against some of the Indian batters who've had weaknesses in the past against wrist spinners? So it's a tactical call that they need to make over here. Shelly Netsky and all of them. It's up to them as to which road they want to travel, which way they want to go about it tactically. I personally still think it will make a lot more sense to add Kim Garth, but that's my personal choice at this venue, Sharjah. It might work out the kind of bowling she does. Some of the cutters and her outswing and steam and deliveries could be actually handy over here. But I'm not too sure about whom are Australia going to go ahead with. Grace Harris is a name that I can be sure of. Taylor's replacement is something I'm not quite sure about. But sorry, just to come back to a topic that we just discussed, I still think there is an outside chance. I know people won't agree. Yastika Bhatia could come in place of Sajna. There is that outside chance, in my opinion. It's to add
could come in place
Number three, yeah.
S Sajna. For S Sajna, she could come in. So she could bat at number 5 as well. But it's just that India might have identified one of Australia's weaknesses, and they might as well want to add an extra left-handed batter in their playing 11, especially in the top 5, to take on the likes of Sophie Molyneux, to take on the likes of Georgia Verham and potentially Alana King. And with Yastika, she's a decent batter of spin as well. She's got those sweep shots which are terrific, and she has started playing those reverse sweeps as well. So I think she could actually come in handy. So if India are, good enough in terms of their tactical thought process, then there could be an outside chance of Yastika Bhatia, coming into the side and spring a huge surprise to many. So I'm just calling it early in case it happens. There is a chance.
But एक चीज बताओ, if you need a left-hander who can sweep well, we already have one of those ना in our middle order. दीप्ति शर्मा को खिला लो यार.
बट वो स्ट्रगल कर रही है एनीवे, और उसको अभी वो रोल मिल गया डाउन दी ऑर्डर. उसको ट्राई करना था तो कर लेते नंबर 3 पे पहले ही, बट गिवन द फैक्ट दैट इंडिया हैव काइंड ऑफ स्टक टू द गन्स कि भाई इट्स इंडिया, सो यू हैव गॉट टू बैट एट 7-8 खत्म. So I don't think they're going to do that against Dipti. And Dipti, as surprising as it may sound, she's got a horrible record against left arm spin. So I'm not too sure about how that's going to go about it, but I'm just seeing this as an outside chance that would make
Yeah.
sense to me as well. I can think of it rationally, and it might make sense to add Yastika.
I mean, it does make sense in Sharjah because the way the surface is played, average scores of 120, 130. So Yasika does not have to really go and attack. All she has to do is time the ball, which comes to her naturally. Bas gaps mein khelo, singles, doubles, rado. So it does make sense. But dekhte hain, how is India looking at this? How is the think tank looking at this? That's something we can't really say for sure. But show me again, Australia will be missing out on Elisa Healy. Pavan also asking us, yes, she won't. I mean, sorry, no, she won't be playing tomorrow along with Taylor Fleming. Do you think that improves India's chances? Do you think Australia would be affected by Lisa Healy's absence at the top and her leadership and wicket keeping and all the?
I think the way we have been desperately trying to look for a crack in Australia's very formidable fortress, this can be definitely one small chink in the armor. But I don't see this coming out very strongly because they have almost like for like replacements for everyone out there, except for, of course, the wicket keeping option that we have discussed yesterday. Of course, Beth Mooning keeping the wicket and then coming out and coming out to bat open. I think that will be a little too, I mean, a little stressing in terms of for Beth Mooney. That's the only problem that I can foresee. But beyond that, I think they do have options available for everything. The leadership qualities of Alisa Hilly have not been most appreciated by many of us. So tactically, that can be managed. In terms of having somebody up there in the batting order, though Australia does bat very deep, but yeah, I mean, Alisa Hilly has been contributing those fiery starts. That's something that Australia, we might think that Australia will miss, but again, I feel that they are well covered for all their bases. Now, of course, then coming, I had a little bit of a point when Jeet was talking about Yastika. So I also feel, I don't know whether Yastika comes in or not. Nevertheless, I also feel that India will not tinker around a lot with respect to their playing 11, but definitely I believe that Harmanpreet Kaur in that number 3 position in Sharjah might not be the best choice going in for India tomorrow. Also, if you look into the last game, Harmanpreet Kaur did come in at number 3, but at the same time, she did start making that impact only after that 15th or the 16th over as a finisher, as a power hitter. And I strongly believe that's where her main game lies. So, especially in Sharjah, if you are bringing in a Harmanpreet Kaur at number 3, and if at all, God forbid, the opening partnership doesn't really click through, then it will be a very difficult game for India to pull through. And that's where having somebody like Yastika who can anchor in, who can also offer that left hand combination, I think that will be really wise for India to really think about.
Yeah, and
If
to be
not,
honest,
at least Jamie, yeah.
yeah, and in the last bit that you mentioned, it's the opening partnership that you mentioned will be key for them because last time around they had such a good start. Harmanpreet
Yeah.
Kaur could take her time and then
Yeah.
kick on. But bhai, Jeet again, opening partnership har baar acha karega, pata nahi, they weren't in the greatest of form in the first couple of games. And like Rahul mentions here, Ashley Gardner versus एक second, sorry, I lost. Ashley Gardner versus Smriti is going to be very interesting. क्या लग रहा है? Because in the last game, if my memory serves me right, Nushi Priyadarshini bowled 2 overs, but Shefali did a good job of ensuring she retained most of the strike. She played 10 of the 12 deliveries. Do you think Shefali will be able to do that tomorrow, or Ashley smart enough to know कि boss मैं स्मृति को ही ball डालूंगी?
When Shobhi talked about the opening partnership, the first thing that came to my mind, which is something that was not there on my mind, is oh my god, there's Ashley Gardner who's going to be bowling to Smriti Mandhana. So
Yeah.
basically, we'll only have one left-hander in our playing 11. That is Dipti Sharma. If Yastika plays, then it's actually really good to have that additional left-hand batter. But I think it's going to be a huge challenging year. Ashley Gardner has done a very good job at this venue as well. I think she had got Chamari, right? Yeah, Chamari was dismissed to Ashley Gardner, and Gardner had bowled terrific spell first up to Chamari, and even I think
Yeah, I
Vishmi
remember that.
Gunaratne. Yeah, so
उसमें out होके
she's been doing
हर्षिता
a
को
very
भी
good
डाला
job.
था. She bowled well. Yeah,
Ha
sorry.
ha. Yeah, exactly. So she bowled really well to these left-handers of Sri Lanka at the same venue. And given that she has had the wood over Smriti for such a long time, I wouldn't be too confident of Smriti actually going unscathed as far as that power play is concerned, because I also see a chance of Sophie Molyneux coming into the mix very early. And Sophie Molyneux can not only dismiss Shafali Verma but also Smriti Mandana. I know maybe you're looking at it from RCB's perspective now, but there is a chance कि वो दोनों
Agreed,
ओपनर
agreed.
को निकाल सकती है, and she could also be introduced a lot more earlier than she generally is. So I'm not too confident about India's opening partnership as far as this game is concerned. वो Ash Gardner है भाई, matchup है, and historically Mandana has struggled against Ashley Gardner in white ball formats. Now I do remember one of the things that I talked about during India versus Australia's test match. So here's an interesting thing, right? It's my observation. Smriti Mandana in white ball formats, especially in T20s, she knows that she has to attack in the power play being an opener. So she has to take a lot more risks and she has to attack the off spinner that she faces, irrespective of who that off spinner is. And in a bid to do so, she often gets out. Technicalities में नहीं जाएंगे, but she often gets out because she has to attack. But when it comes to ODIs or test matches, she has time on her hands. She has time on her side. So she can take that time and see off those off spinners and bat for long, see off the spell and attack the other bowlers. And that's the reason why, she has bad record against Gardner in T20s. It's better in ODIs and it's even better in test matches. And this is a common theme against off spinners in these three formats for Smriti Mandana. So वो हमेशा issue होने ही वाला है. She knows that as an opener, she has to attack whoever she faces. और उस चक्कर में आउट होती है. So सेम इधर भी हो सकता है, मेरा मानना है.
The only sort of silver lining for me is the fact that it's not just that India had a very good opening partnership. The way Shefali and Smriti both were willing to step down the track, go aerial, and loft it over the inner circle, and these pointers will once again come handy to them in Sharjah as well during the power play overs. So I'm hoping that if they are able to replicate that performance, if shouldn't, I mean, it does not have to be to that extent, but power play can be, even if they're able to reach 40, 45 for one or even two, I'd be happy. I'd take that, to be honest, because wahan se, I still think even against this Australian side, if India is able to cross 140, that is game on for sure. So it'll be interesting क्या करते हैं openers, कैसे खेलता है. I hope they don't sort of go into a shell trying to just knock their matchups out and trying to focus on मैं बाद में इसको खेल लूंगी उसको खेलूंगी. They understand कि बैट बॉल्स जो भी डाल रहे अटैक करना है, सर्कल के ऊपर से मारना है, बस वैसे ही सोच के खेले तो अच्छा होगा. तो देखते हैं क्या होता है. Anyways, we'll just take a couple of comments before wrapping up. Nimish Janeja saying, what's the scenario of India to qualify for the semis apart from winning the game? How much margin and all of that? Right now, there's no margin in place, Nimish, because India already has a better net run rate than New Zealand. So कल का मैच अगर जीतते हैं तो न्यूजीलैंड के लिए मार्जिन का पता चलेगा. अभी फिलहाल तो कोई मार्जिन है ही नहीं. There are no numbers to be looked at. India has to win the game. अगर इंडिया मैच हारती है तो then again numbers will come into picture कि न्यूजीलैंड हारती भी है तो किस मार्जिन से हारती है और जीतती है तो न्यूजीलैंड will go through simple. So that's
And
that.
what do you guys feel like win the toss, and what should be the stance of the teams?
Bad first मेरे हिसाब से तो भाई, especially यहाँ पे because teams, I know New Zealand won the game today chasing, but that's also down to Sri Lanka's poor bowling and fielding. अगर if you are going to do well and if you back your bowlers, you can defend here, and I would back India's bowlers to defend than India's batters to chase. Jeet, what
By
about
bat
you?
first. Bat first. And it's not only about the conditions of where you're playing. Screw those conditions. It's about the opponent. Australia invariably in crunch games like to put the runs on the board, and then defend it. They know pressure is a thing. They can take it. The opponent cannot. So they always look to pile on runs in the first innings and then defend it. वो कितना भी total वो लोग लगाए वो लोग defend कर लेते हैं. So when it's Australia, it's more about looking at the opponent rather than the conditions over here, and conditions also dictate the same irrespectively. So just bat first and get the job done. That's the right way to go from India's perspective.
चलो देखते हैं. Meanwhile, Ramesh being very pessimistic there, saying इतनी बातों का कोई फायदा नहीं है भाई, हारना ही है अपने को. We'll need a miracle for India to win. Australia need to have a very ordinary day, and India need one to remember. It has to be a near perfect game for them. They did have not just a near perfect game; they had a perfect game in the previous encounter against Sri Lanka. Let's hope they are able to do an encore tomorrow. But anyways, that's that from the preview and review of all the games that we had to do. Last bit though, prediction time. Jeet, let's start with you. England, Scotland, India, Australia. Who are you backing? Rather, who do you think will win the encounters?
England for sure. That's a no-brainer. यार ऑस्ट्रेलिया इंडिया मत फंसाओ यार मुझे. I'll have to think it through. Maybe you guys can go ahead. Let me just think a bit more about this. Because I'm not too sure. It's a very tough one, yaar. It's a very tough call.
Of course,
It's a very tough
इसीलिए
call.
तो आपको बुलाया है. आसान होता तो मैं ही बोल देता अरे हाँ यही जीतेंगे भाई. But Soumi, what do you think?
बताओ अभी.
India, Australia.
I think England is a no-brainer. And in terms of India, Australia, यार, let me be a little jingoistic. ठीक है, बोल देते हैं India. But over and above यार, group stages में India perform करती है और अब तो वर्ल्ड कप बस शुरू हुआ है. अभी तो इंडिया जीतेगी.
Optimism. See, I want to be optimistic, but I'm just trying to visualize how it will play out.
ये
I'm
देखो,
just scared.
why I also say you is this. See, Australia always traditionally performs the best under pressure. They are a side that thrives under pressure. कल के मैच में उनके पास कोई प्रेशर है ही नहीं, तो उस सिचुएशन में तो ठीक है, विल सेल थ्रू. ग्रुप मैच है, ठीक है, चल जाएगा.
अरे वैसे वो अपने आप को प्रेशर में डाल सकता है ना कि कैप्टन नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है, तो हमें जीतना है कैप्टन के लिए. वो तो कुछ भी बोल के कर सकता है, हमें क्या पता. बट वन थिंग दैट आई एम स्कैर्ड ऑफ इज Grace Harris opening. I really think she can make or break the game, and she can break the game by herself. I know, like based on current form and injury and all of that, but it reminds me of that UP Warriors Mumbai game, yeah, जहाँ पे Vrinda Dinesh got injured and Kiran Avgire had to come in, not even Grace Harris. But
Yeah.
ऐसे अचानक से आ गई और मार के चली गई. वैसे हो सकता है यहाँ पे भी कि अचानक से आ गई. No one will be expecting Grace Harris अरे out of position खेल रही है, क्या ही कर लेगी. फिर पता नहीं रेणुका को मूवमेंट नहीं मिला. She decides to replicate her WPL performance. So फिर क्या करे. तो मेरे को वो डर है. I don't know, somewhere I feel Grace Harris can potentially make a huge mark on the game tomorrow. But I have no clue. I generally don't.
क्या हुआ? क्या हुआ? What happened?
Like I don't. No, because I usually am able to visualize one way or the other. वो गलत होता है वो अलग बात है. इस बार कुछ होता ही नहीं. मतलब एक दिशा ही नहीं पकड़ रहा है दिमाग की. मतलब
मैनिफेस्टेशन बोल के
Welcome
एक
to the
चीज
same
होती है.
boat. Welcome to the same boat.
मैनिफेस्टेशन बोल के एक चीज होती है, वो कर लेते हैं.
हम रिवर्स जंक्शन के मतलब खिलाड़ी हैं भाई. हम मैनिफेस्टेशन के खिलाड़ी नहीं हैं. तो I going by that trend, let me just say Australia, yeah, Grace Harris will make the game for Australia, and yeah, they'll win the game. So Australia and England will win tomorrow. That's my prediction. Jeet bhai, क्या लग रहा है?
Yeah, I'll go for India. I still think India should win this game. They have got better resources. I know Australia का भी spin attack अच्छा है, but batting में अभी भी there are quite a few batters who are very unconvincing to me. Beth Mooney, somebody I'm still not going to trust. I know she gets those runs, but they are very scratchy as well. And she takes a lot of time as well. And of course, Dipti has got a terrific record against her. So I'm not too sure about how Beth Mooney is going to go about it. And India generally plan well. That's nothing I want to watch out for against Beth Mooney. What do you plan? Because there are certain things that invariably work against Beth Mooney, and Dipti Sharma knows how to get her. So it's going to be interesting to see how she actually goes about it. And besides that, also Elise Perry has been struggling slightly for her starts. Grace Harris is a first ball duck that's loading. Talia Migra has not been amongst runs. Ash Gardner hasn't got a lot of batting. Annabelle Sutherland at 9. So I'm not too hopeful. And Australia have to decide, do they want to help their rivals across the sea, the trans-Tasman rivals in New Zealand, or do they want to help a team that's a lot more stronger? So it's a call that they need to take over here. But I irrespectively feel India should win this. Margin पता नहीं कितना होगा, but India जीत जाएगा ये.
चलो देखते हैं क्या होता है. 2 of them going for India, 1 of them going for Australia. Let's not say who's who. But anyways, that's that from today's preview and review. Thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, like always, please make sure you hit the like button, people, if you haven't already. And also, please subscribe to us if you haven't already. It's the all-important clash tomorrow. India taking on Australia. We will be back tomorrow at 11 p.m. And let's be hopeful that we will be talking about, a win or a performance that we all want to talk about. That's all I'd say. And thank you so much. Goodbye. Ta-ta.